If you've ever felt like you want to be a parent, but you just don't feel like you ever could get there with OCD, or maybe you already are a parent and you've been struggling with OCD the whole time, I'm going to talk to you today about my experience of parenting with OCD, my experience of deciding to become a parent while I had OCD, and also how I recovered from OCD and what life is like on the other side. Spoiler alert, it's awesome. I really like parenting. I never thought I could ever possibly be a mum. So the fact that I'm sitting here today, even making this video, like I do have to pinch myself. So we'll start with a bit about my journey with OCD. I am 37 years old and my name's Jade, by the way, if you don't know me. And I've had OCD since I can remember. First starting really badly as an early teenager and then hitting really hard in probably 2003 or 4 when I was 15, maybe younger, and just feeling this completely overwhelming life will never be the same again. So when I hit my 20s, I didn't know I had OCD. I was just, something's wrong with my brain, it's broken. I thought I was an awful person, and the thought of ever being a parent wasn't even something that came up for me. It was a given, like, no, you can't be responsible for anybody, you're a danger, you're a bad person. So I just spent my 20s running away from my brain, thinking there was something really wrong with me. And I had this sadness because I'd met my now husband and I loved the idea of family life, and I just thought it sounded so lovely, but it just wasn't going to happen for me. It was how I felt. So I just put it off. And then my husband, after we'd been married for 3 years, so this takes me to age 29 now, back in 2016 or 17. Yeah, 2017. And he's like, I really want to have a baby. Like, can we have a baby? And I'm like, oh, I felt these maternal instincts coming in. So if you're not yet a parent and you're feeling like, I'd love to be one, but it's not something I can do, I just really want to encourage you to listen to those instincts, those, not even instincts, because in OCD it's hard to trust instincts, but I just mean like that feeling that you would love to be a parent, even though it's not an option for you. Like your current belief system is leading you to feel that it's not an option for you, but you feel that you wish you were the type of person who could have kids. And you look at other people who've got children, maybe you and your family and friends, and you're like, oh, if only I didn't avoid children, if only my life were different, if only I didn't have OCD, or if you believe all your fears are true, if only I wasn't a danger, then I could be like that. So just focus on that want, not wanting children, the wanting to be able to have children. Because I feel like it's very similar to infertility in that way. It's like you deeply want to, but it feels like it isn't a possibility for you. So the first thing I want to say to you is it definitely is. And existing parents, don't worry, I'm going to get to you in a minute because you've already made this jump. It definitely is an option for you. If you can just focus on that feeling of knowing that it is something that you want, even if it feels completely unattainable right now, just like grab onto that. And don't ever let OCD be a reason not to have children, because I just think that is so heartbreaking. Like, lots of people don't want children these days, and that is totally fine. I've always said I will only have children when I feel an overwhelming urge and desire to. And when I was 29, that did start to kick in, and I thought, yeah, I really want a child. Like, I want to have a child. And then for my second child, when people were saying, you're going to have another, and I said, well, if I get this urge to, I will, and if I don't, I won't. So I had my second, and the urge was strongly there to have another baby, to have a sibling for my other daughter. And so I went for it. And as soon as she was born, I was like 100% done. Like, no, like, it's done. I'm done. I'm happy. So there is that deep feeling in you that like you do want something. And so when you're in that place of being unsure about whether or not you could take that leap, just hold on to the fact that you do want to, even if there seems like there's no route, because I'm going to tell you the route soon. So obviously we know with OCD that exposure is all about facing the fears and moving towards and not away. So if you have established that you do have that desire to have children, actually having children when you're afraid of that is the best possible exposure. I don't know if I'd have recovered from my OCD if I wasn't basically living with my greatest fear. So when my daughter was born, my first daughter in 2017, the world went black for 9 months when she was born. I think I've shared pictures before with this community. Oh, and just by the way, I just want to shout out that a lot of people in the past in comments have asked me, do I do coaching one-to-one? And I'm not currently a coach for OCD recovery. The guys are amazing, so make sure you message them to get coaching. But I had been thinking recently, what could I do to better support you, even though I'm not doing this sort of one-to-one coaching? So I've decided with the team at OCD Recovery to host a webinar on October 7th. So just get in touch with the team. I'm sure they will link details in the description box. If you want to join me for a webinar all about this topic, all about me diving into how I overcame OCD while having children. So if you relate to any of what I'm saying, just make sure you register for that webinar. It's on October 7th and it's going to be run by me, and it's just going to be a really nice bunch of people together, either existing parents who are struggling or people who would like to become parents. So back to how to get better. If you can picture that the way to get better is to walk towards your fear, not away from them, you start to realize that having a child is the answer to overcoming OCD. So I probably wouldn't recommend it the way it happened for me, because weirdly, I only found out I actually had OCD when I was 6 months pregnant. So I had been having therapy since the age of 25. I was 29 when I got pregnant with my daughter, and I had just been having therapy about these bad thoughts. And basically the therapy was just telling me, you're a good person. So it was kind of working a little bit to take the edge off. Like I was confessing everything, and they were like, don't worry, this is all normal. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. You just have to not think about them too much. It absolutely should become a parent. So obviously long term, that's not going to work. But to some degree, it was better than this like life I'd had from age 12 to 25, where I just didn't even like speak to anyone about what was going on ever. So I was like, let's just make the jump, let's have a kid. Like I am a good person. And when I was 6 months pregnant, a CBT therapist I was with, we'd been together for a while. She just said, oh, have you ever heard of OCD harm? That's what she called it. And I was just like, I don't have OCD. Like I'm very messy. I'm not messy now, but I was very messy back in my 20s. And when I started to learn about it, it was like, wow, oh my gosh, this is what I've got. And I was like, this is incredible. I'm fixed. Like my baby arrives in 2 months. Everything's going to be great because every thought I have is just OCD. It's not me. It's my OCD. And I thought, brilliant, like perfect timing. And then she was born, and then the intrusive thoughts hit the second she arrived. And it was just like, I've never felt more alone in my entire life. I remember one of my loneliest feelings, and you might relate to this if you're a new parent, or if you're still, if you're a parent and you're still struggling with OCD, just going to play groups, where there's other mums and they've got like, everything's nice and they've been for Prosecco lunch the day before, and you're like, I can't even eat. Like, how are you drinking alcohol and like eating and wearing makeup as if nothing has happened? Like, how are you functioning? And they'd be like, oh, isn't it just so nice, like with your baby? And they'd have their new buggy and all their like nice clothes on. And I would just be like literally a wreck, covered in sick, like not sleeping at all. And also just like the intrusive thoughts were in all day and then in the night. And I just thought, I would just look at them and think like, I just want your brain. I was so envious of them. And it's so interesting, the other side. I'm not envious of people anymore. I can see when people have got things that I would like, I can think, oh wow, like your life looks great. I would love to have your career or a house like that, or you've got, I don't know what I would be envious of, but just I can feel that oh, that would be nice, but I don't want to swap it because I'm really happy with like my perspectives on life. And so the second time round, when I had my second daughter, so I've got a nearly 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, the second time around, because of all the recovery work that I'm going to tell you about now, it was the complete opposite. It was like what I would want it to be. It was like in a movie. And I actually told this story to Nick once, one of the OCD recovery coaches. I said to him, I was like, it's like Christmas morning. Every day is like Christmas morning. And he told me a little while later, he was like, I was a bit worried when you said that, because I was thinking, Jade, like, you're going to come crashing down like that. That sounds a bit unrealistic. But I didn't mean that every day was like incredible, like Christmas. I meant that just feeling a baseline peace, not having that 24/7 torture going on in my brain, just sitting on the grass with like my kid and like a friend was like bliss. And so the feeling I was getting was not this euphoric, like the experience of what was happening was not this euphoric ethereal place. It was just that baseline peace, which is how my life is now, felt like Christmas Day. So every morning I'd wake up and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm like this now. I wake up every morning and I'm too tired because I haven't had enough sleep. My kids still wake me 2 or 3 times. My DNA, like, I don't know if you've heard about this, but you can get DNA testing for, and don't do this if you're compulsive about stuff like sleep, but my dad, someone in my family had DNA testing about their wake time, and apparently everyone's is different. It's hardwired into you, and you can fight it if you want, but it won't be ideal. But yeah, mine's like 9 a.m. or something, and I have to get up at 6:45 every day. So when I wake, it's like cortisol, like I feel like, oh, like I need a coffee, I've got to drag myself. And I could go to bed at 9 p.m. I would still feel horrendous. But I'm like, all the things I'm going to do today, like, can't wait. I'm accepting of that feeling. And so that is my baseline now. Like, just being happy, just thinking, yeah, like, even if I'm having a crappy time with something, I'm still baseline, healthy brain. And so how did I achieve that? Well, the first one to say is that all of the work of Rob, and so Robert Bray of OCD Recovery and everyone else in his team, is all about the missing piece in OCD recovery. This is not some like kooky, everything you've learned is wrong, come over here and do this weird different thing. This is like everything you've been doing, yeah, great. If it's gotten you fully better, great. If you're 70% better, like I was, like functioning better, okay, like maybe this will be a useful tool on top of that. Keep going with everything you've been doing, although there are some things that I'll tell you to stop doing. Like, here's some new things. Okay, don't lean your phone on a washing basket. I've just moved house and I can't find my tripod. Okay, so the first thing is exposures, huge amounts of exposures, like way more than you think. You have to face your fears. So if you have got a child already, then you need to be doing all the things you're scared of. So for me, bath times, I felt a heightened sense of responsibility. I hated it. My homework was bath every single night, no getting out of it, no asking relatives to do it, no passing it off to your husband. You're changing every single nappy, maybe that's your fear. You are near swimming pools, you are near sharp knives, whatever it is, you're near things that could be contaminated, you aren't over washing your hands, whatever your fear is, whatever your OCD is telling you needs to be done, you want to be moving towards that as like more than you think. So sometimes people in therapy will say, oh, I've done that 3 times this week, is that enough? No, if you're asking if it's enough, it's not enough, more. I had such an intense exposure period because I was just with this baby all the time. I was completely trapped and I had to go at it hard. So if you haven't got a kid yet, like I said earlier, I wouldn't recommend doing it how I did, which was where I went from never having even looked after a child and feeling like, oh, I could never be responsible for that. Like I just couldn't do it, to literally just like being pregnant and finding out I had OCD. So I recommend that if you want to have a child and you know you do, just start doing things towards your fear. So regularly look after relatives, children, go to playgrounds a lot, just anything that you think is what's making you uncomfortable in relation to becoming a parent. So if it's, you've got a fear of the extra responsibility or the fact you won't cope or the fact you'll be too tired, like make yourself tired, like force yourself to do things that over time prove to your brain that actually, even though it's not ideal, I can do this. I don't think people want exposures to be the answer, and I don't think that people like to hear it because it's hard. It's the scariest part of everything. And even when the guys on this channel talk about the missing piece, which is unconditional acceptance, which I'll talk about in a sec, sometimes what can happen is you're like, oh, that's easier. Disputing my rational beliefs, working through my fears on paper, that's better. I'll just do that. I'll just read the reading list. And then you forget about exposures, but honestly, exposures when done correctly and teamed up with not doing your compulsions is just so huge. The next one is, of course, uncertainty. Yes, all the things we're taught about thoughts are just thoughts. That might work for some people. Some people get better from OCD as soon as they learn that these are just thoughts. They don't mean anything. Go with uncertainty. I can never really know. But look, if you've had chronic severe OCD, guilt-ridden, shame, obsessed, like absolutely distraught by your thoughts, believe to a big extent that they're actually just real, then you were like me. So you're going to need something deeper than that. And by all means, try the thoughts of thoughts thing for some mild cases. For many mild and medium cases, I'm sure it does unlock, because there are some great therapists out there for OCD, and that's great. But if you're one of the people who's like, I've tried it all and I'm just not getting better, the next tool, unconditional acceptance, is going to be what finally unlocks it for you, like it did for me. So unconditional acceptance, I've talked about it before. I've done another video on it. So if you want to scroll through or just search like Jade, unconditional acceptance, OCD recovery, something like that, I'm sure it'll come up. It's this idea that we don't want our fears to be true, but even if they were, it isn't as terrifying as we think. And I can prove it right now. If you think about something you're not scared of, but it's something that is someone else's biggest OCD fear, the fact that they are terrified of it and you're just rationally not wanting it is all the proof you need. So I've never suffered with contamination OCD, but friends who have told me about things like, they wouldn't touch a door handle just in case of contamination, or a multitude of other things. Deep rooted in that was a fear of, ultimately, I suppose, death, getting ill, contracting something, passing it on to someone else maybe. I've never ever experienced that. So to me, in fact, yesterday I went to the bathrooms in a department store and the cubicle I was in had hardly any soap left. And I was like, that is grim. Like, I half washed my hands and then opened the door, and the door handle was a bit wet. And I thought, oh, some gross person has just like been to the toilet, probably not bothered washing their hands, and opened it. But I didn't obsess at all. My brain automatically accepted the very small risk that I could have gotten seriously sick because I didn't use much soap and I touched a door handle that was wet. The only thing my brain did was remind me that this is a good example. Another good example in terms of children, because if your fear of having kids is like, what if I harm them by accident, or what if my responsibility OCD kicks in? I remember once my kids had these new water bottles for school, and the kind of metal ones with the lid, and they went to school for 3 days and I'd filled these water bottles. And then I came home and I was emptying out the water bottle and I was like, hang on, there's something in there. And I shook it hard and literally one of those pouches fell out. So for 3 days, those pouches with the like keep fresh balls in? If you had a fear of chemicals and poisoning people, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I was like, well, they've been fine, like they're obviously fine, so there's nothing I can do about it now. I didn't even think about it. I was just like, meh. But that you can see with OCD how someone with poisoning responsibility harm OCD with their children would absolutely fall to pieces, but I wasn't scared at all. Why? Because my brain has a natural, healthy, rational response to that threat. But if your OCD is zoomed in on that, it's going to latch really, really hard. So unconditional acceptance is looking at, what is it I'm actually afraid of here? Is it actually as terrifying as I think? If it were true, and we can even apply this to taboo themes, if it were true, would it be as bad as I thought, or would it just be something I really wouldn't want? When Rob, who coached me, first said that to me about my fear, I pretty much hung up. I was just like, are you kidding me? But you have to remember that acceptance of your fear, acceptance of the possibility of worst case scenario is not agreement. It's not saying, yeah, that's cool, I want it. It's going to take a long time. But a really good example of how it worked in practice was my fear of I used to have a fear of poisoning people through like raw meat, and once we'd worked through that was a really easy one for me because it didn't latch that hard. So he had me picturing, let's imagine that you did serve dinner and the chicken was undercooked, and then all of you ended up in intensive care on drips because you had such serious food poisoning and one of your family members was at death's door. Let's work toward your acceptance as opposed to that's fine. We're not saying, oh yeah, great, that would be cool. We are working on, even if that happened, which if you want reassurance, like it's very unlikely to happen, like 0.000 million, you know, we hear that from our therapists. Oh yeah, that's never gonna happen. We can hear it once and feel better. And I'm telling you, it's like a drug, it will wear off. So there's no point even going there. Like if it makes you feel better for the first time you do this, go, oh, but it's really unlikely to happen. It's never gonna happen. But the fact is you don't know that. Like nobody knows that their fear couldn't come true. Nobody can kind of prove that what they fear, no one can win that argument, that internal dialogue, because it's only gonna latch harder. And so once you've come to peace with, I don't want that to be true, but even if it was, life would be survivable. And so that's why in the OCD recovery reading list, which is such a good tool to start with, we read a lot about people who have faced really extreme living conditions, because the human mind and body is a lot more robust than we give it credit for. So what you're going to be doing over a series of 6 months to a year, it was about 8-9 months for me before things even started to budge a little bit, is you start to dispute your irrational beliefs. And we'll talk a lot more about that on the webinar that I'm hosting on October 7th. So just have a look in the description box if you want to join me for that, because we'll go a little bit deeper on how you can apply that tool, because unconditional acceptance is what led me to be better from my OCD. And again, with the chicken now, sometimes I put down food and I think, oh, is that, to be honest, I don't really overthink if it's cooked or not, but I am at peace. Like, I obviously don't want my family to get really sick, but I'm not going to give it the bandwidth. I'm not going to overthink about it. Same way with the little pouch in my kids' drinks bottle. It's not that me not obsessing and ruminating for 24 hours and checking if they're going to be ill and checking for signs of illness and rushing to the doctors and doing tests. Just because I'm not doing that completely irrational behavior doesn't mean I want them to get sick with it. The point of the matter is unconditional acceptance of whatever life throws at us. We can handle it. And so once I'd mastered that skill, I actually got really good as a parent, because not only was I starting to overcome my OCD fears, so life was unlocking, everything felt better. I was just loving being with my child, which is something I'd always wanted. I didn't want her to have this kind of controlled childhood where I didn't let her do anything, I wouldn't go anywhere with her, and I was just so overcautious about every little tiny decision. I didn't want that for her. I wanted her to have the type of childhood she's having now, like wild and free and just experiencing everything. And so the unconditional acceptance, not only did it help me overcome OCD to a point where when I had my second baby, it was like as if I didn't have OCD having her. It was great. I was like straight into it, loving life, just the best, love at first sight, just the best feeling in the world. And what unconditional acceptance has given me and OCD recovery is that now when I was going to baby groups with my second daughter and like looking around, I didn't feel any jealousy at all. If anything, I had to have a word with myself to not feel that kind of that I'm greater than ego thing, because it's like, well, we're all exactly the same. Just because, like, if someone's got more knowledge in their brain because they spent more time reading, that doesn't make them any more than someone who hasn't spent time reading. Like, we're all exactly the same. It's just that I had spent time working on all these perspectives. So I was thinking, oh, if only you knew what it was like, because the things you're complaining about right now, that isn't something I would complain about. And I wish I could. I wish, rather than me being like, I wish I was in your brain, I was thinking, I wish you could see in mine to help you not stress about that thing, because that's not something to stress over. So my new brain framework, this is really not about just surviving with OCD and just getting by with OCD. that's what a lot of people will tell you recovery feels like. It's like, oh, you learn to manage. No way. Like, what I was terrified of in life is now my biggest joy. Like, how is that just getting by? I didn't want to just get by, and life is better than it would have been if I didn't have OCD. And I never thought I would say that. To be honest, every now and then I do feel a bit of like, whew, like it hits me hard. Like, God, it reminds me of like if someone were to look back, and I've never been through a war, but that has to be horrendous, like unimaginable. But that is how I feel about how living with OCD was. So it is like, I can look back and think, whoa, like, oh. And sometimes when people want to learn about it, they're almost like, it's like I'm in a zoo and they're just like, oh wow, that's amazing, it's so interesting, like, oh my God, what was it like? And I do feel this kind of rising like, oh, I just don't actually want to talk about this, it's horrible. But only like in how someone where something bad happened to them in the past that they've moved on from, and like you think, oh, that was hard. Not actually a fear of OCD, more just like, oh, God, those were crazy times, like I can't believe that I lived like that. And so I just want to leave you with this. Join my webinar 7th of October. I'd love to see you there if you're struggling with this. It's really for parents who are stuck. Maybe you've come some of the way, maybe you're a new parent, maybe you've got grown-up kids and you're still struggling. Maybe you want to be a parent, you can't imagine it. So, this doesn't have to be for mums, you could be a potential father or father yourself. If you're scared about being a parent or becoming a parent or anything associated with that, just come along. We're going to have a great time. People, like I said, have been asking me for a long time, will I do coaching? Do I offer anything at all? So this is like my little, okay, let's do something. So please make sure you register. I've got a little notebook here. Like, what did I want to say to you, just in case I've missed anything? Oh yeah, get started. Like, just get started. Don't worry about how long it's been. If you're like, oh, it's so long for me. I suffered with OCD from 12 to, well, I only learned I had OCD when I was 29, so age 12 to 29, and then I recovered by the time I was 32, so it took a while, and I've been recovered 6 years now, I think. Yeah, something like that, maybe a bit less. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, a long time. And just get started. Don't think about what you've done before. Don't think about how long you've been coasting. Don't worry if you've lost your weight. Just get started. Like, just decide, I'm not living like this anymore. Or carry on as you are. But be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself that I am choosing to stay stuck. Like, yeah, I am doing compulsions now. I am coasting now. Make sure that you are honest with yourself and try not to feel sorry for yourself and be like, oh, this is so awful. Like, you are strong enough to do this. So once you get to a point where I'm not doing this anymore, you will find the strength to start. And then it's just about being consistent. So even if you don't feel motivated, you have to keep going. I mean, there were days when I don't know, I'm pointing here, I've lived in 3 houses since this house, but we had this breakfast bar in my house where my first daughter was born, and I used to actually cry, like shaking under it, being like, no, like I can't do this anymore. But like the next day I would still do my exposures. I just wanted to be better. I was like, I don't want this anymore. And so unfortunately, it's really, really hard to recover from OCD. Like, there's no easy way. It's really annoying. But I promise that on the other side, you will be so glad that you did it, and you'll just be such a better, more upgraded version of yourself that you just won't believe it. You won't believe how open-minded you'll be. Like, I mean, I change. I think I'm a new person every 6 months. I will find out about something and I'll learn about it, and I'm like, wow, like that's unbelievable. And then 6 months later, I've read another book and I'm like, I think that was all great. Like, that was all wrong. This is right. And then I'm like, but this probably isn't right, because the next thing I read, like the other week, I was reading about behavioral economics, and then I moved on to this book about with a bit of Stephen Hawking, and then I moved on to this guy who's like talks about the experiences of First Peoples, of Indigenous people, and how their thinking can shape the world. And then I was back to philosophy, and like your brain is just so fluid. Like, you can learn, and you know that you don't know anything. And actually, if you think about how spongy that is and how unrigid that is, OCD really thrives in a rigid brain, in a black and white brain, and our society is very black and white. So we're learning the process of having a flexible mind, of being open-minded, of understanding that our fears are our perspectives on those fears, not reality. So let me know if you have any questions about the upcoming webinar in the comments. What I'll do is I'll check in on them and reply personally, and just let me know how you're getting on as well. And I really hope to see you on the webinar on October 7th. Bye.